Hello, and welcome to the live part of the show. We are now, of course, going to be discussing the album in question from here on out. And once again, I am not alone. No, in fact, I'm once again joined by another wonderful guest to help me tap into Wings Over America. Who is my guest, I hear you say? Well, I pretty much met this guy on Facebook, of all places. It sounds very modern and very hipster and very trite, but it was true. And ever since, we've both found out that the other party can pretty much endlessly prattle on about Wings and solo McCartney until the cows come home, which is a very useful trait for one to have. And we've pretty much been in regular contact ever since. And very quickly, I knew I kind of wanted this chap to come on the show, as he's the perfect kind of guy to pick apart a release like this. I'm always trawling through YouTube for ever newer and more obscure, solo McCartney and Wings content, and the channel, dubbed Jimmy McCulloch Fan, had been on my radar for quite some time, as it offers an almost encyclopedic collection of behind the scenes and early cuts of albums, and almost everything that McCartney has ever released as a live show. And it just gives those who are curious enough, with a lust for this kind of thing, a real insight into the mercurial sound that is McCartney. I cannot recommend the channel enough for all of you out there on YouTube and online. Please subscribe to Jimmy McCulloch Fan. You will get your money's worth. Now, the post that actually connected us wasn't something that I had posted but merely commented on. It was kind of a quick chat review of Tom Doyle's 2013 book, which I'm currently reading now, Man on the Run, Paul McCartney in the 1970s. And in an attempt to gain some closure on one of the odder stories in the Wings mythos that I've come across, I commented saying, and this is something that I've previously mentioned on the show, a tale in which Jimmy McCulloch stayed up all night, perhaps under the influence of some substances, and proceeded to, based on mounting disputes with the McCartneys, winded up pointing a gun at them whilst they slept, either outside their bedroom window or directly in the room. Now, before we carry on, I better introduce the guy before we actually get too deep into this. His name is Paul Sally. He is Jimmy McCulloch Fan, and I couldn't be gladder to have him on the show. Hello, Paul. I'm finally glad to be able to have you on, man. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm just enjoying my first day off in 2 weeks, actually, and what better way to celebrate than by discussing possibly, well, literally the biggest Wings release as we know. So, Paul, could you elaborate on this Jimmy McCulloch rumour, the thing that kind of sparked all of this? You must be able to shed some light on where that started.
Well, it started in the infamous Paul McCartney biography, Blackbird, by Jeffrey Giuliano, who fancies himself as sort of a Beatles expert, but in reality he's nothing more than a tabloid author who makes up stories for his books. So apparently this story came from Denny Lane, but Denny has denied that it ever happened. So who knows what the author was thinking when he wrote it. And then if you read that book and you read that part, it just sounds like a badly written fan fiction, because he goes into things like Jimmy's mindset and things that Jimmy allegedly said, and it's really unbelievable. So honestly, I don't even know why people believe it in the first place, but what you can do.
I mean, it is a very juicy story of this nature. It's like, it would feature on one of those awful online top tens, the things you didn't know that happened to Paul McCartney, but it really never has been verified. I think Jojo Lane may have sold the story to the papers as well, so it kind of makes sense that a very tabloidy guy would be kind of perpetuating that kind of myth. But obviously, we'll never truly know, as the man who was most involved is obviously no longer with us anymore. The thing with the chickens with Jimmy's true, though, isn't it? Where he went into one of Linda's chicken coops and broke all the eggs or something like that, threw them against the wall.
Apparently that one is true. I've talked with a couple of recording engineers from the Mulligan sessions, and they mentioned that a rock and roll incident had taken place the night before they were due to start the Mulligan sessions with the local Pipetown band. I guess Jimmy was there before the night before, but he wasn't there after. So take that for what you will.
Yeah, I can imagine McCartney can whip you off anywhere in about 5 minutes if he truly wants to. And obviously Jimmy McCulloch is missing from the Mulligan single. He has no involvement with it whatsoever.
Well, he did tell friends after it was released that he did play acoustic rhythm guitar on it, and his family does have the awards for the Mull of Kintyre and Girls' School single.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, obviously, Jimmy's contributions on Girls' School are very pronounced and very obvious. That is one of Jimmy's kind of best songs. It's not one of my personal favourites, but I do get that if you are a fan of Jimmy McCulloch, it's one of the few ones where you can go, yeah, that's where he really gave something to the band.
And there's an interesting interview that Jimmy did with his hometown newspaper in late August, where he actually describes the recording of the Mull of Kintyre sessions. So I'll have to send that to you, because it's pretty amazing for a guy that wasn't there for the sessions, being able to describe it in pretty good detail.
Yeah, it is another example possibly of the Macagander, McCartney's ability to kind of rewrite history as the victor, as it were. Obviously there are many elements of his life that kind of get swept under the rug and are a bit hush-hush about and all that. But it is a shame that Jimmy left, because the next album was kind of sorely lacking in a guitar sound, and it wasn't until Lawrence Juba joined the band did the band become a rock band again. Jimmy was one of those elements that made it a true rock band, at least insofar. I've always felt that Wings were a bit of a pop band in Rockskin's clothing, but Jimmy, when Jimmy was there, he did kind of lean it more to a more rocky direction. Speaking of the book in question, the one that I mentioned earlier, Man on the Run, Paul McCartney in the 1970s, the reason obviously you reacted so swiftly to my misguided comment was that you had some direct involvement with the book itself. I can actually see your name in the back right now in the thank you section. So what was your involvement with the book?
Pretty much I just helped Tom with research pertaining to Jimmy. I helped him set up a couple interviews with a couple people that knew Jimmy, and then I met him when I was in London. He was working on the book, and I was studying there at the time, so it was perfect timing. We met at a pub, and we just kind of discussed, what he was working on and what I was working on, and just talking about Jimmy and his research that he had done at that point, and how I could possibly help him.
Obviously, we have to address your name in this episode, your moniker, if you will. You are the Jimmy McCulloch fan, and obviously that's a very definite statement for anyone who is into Wings. Not many people would put Jimmy McCulloch as their favourite member of Wings. What draws you so much, or what did draw you initially to the young Scottish guitarist so much?
Well, when I discovered him, I was 13 to 14, so being quite young at the time, and seeing a lead guitar player who was pretty young and had the same sort of slim build as I do, playing with Paul McCartney, had quite an effect on me. And once I heard his solo on Junior's Farm and saw the live video from Wings Over America, it pretty much made me want to learn more about Jimmy. So I was disappointed to learn that at the time there wasn't, a whole lot out there about him, just little blurbs in rock history books. So that sort of piqued my interest and made me want to, do more for him.
Was he the best guitarist Wings ever had, in your opinion?
Oh, there's no doubt.
Okay.
No contest.
You're a fan of this lineup then? Do you think this is the best lineup the band ever had?
Yeah, without a doubt, yes.
Okay.
I think the proof is in the pudding with Wings Over America.
What makes the addition of Jimmy McCulloch and Joe English so starkly different than the other lineups then?
I think it was just Jimmy and Joe's musical abilities, and the whole chemistry of the band seemed to just click when Jimmy joined. He didn't really get that feeling with Henry McCulloch and Denny Sywell and Jeff Britton before Joe joined. And then after Jimmy and Joe left, I'm sure Paul was fed up with having to have another new lineup, especially one that was Wings at their peak, and having to replace Jimmy and Joe. I think Paul just got fed up and wanted to pretty much end the band. And he did, thanks to an incident in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, it never seems like they were going to recreate the kind of almost Beatles-esque furore and excitement when the band was going over the world like that. And like I say, if you saw the band, statistically, you saw this lineup. This is the kind of definitive visual statement of the band. There was also the film Rock Show as well that kind of covers the same subject matter as we're going to be discussing today. I wasn't too much of a fan of that. I thought it was a little bit flat. I'm assuming you've seen that as well.
Yeah, back when Wings Over America was released through the Archive collection, they also released Rock Show as a separate release, but they also released it in theaters for a short run. So I was able to see it on the big screen, and that was that was absolutely incredible. The closest I'll ever get to see Wings. It was amazing, and in my opinion, Rock Show is one of the greatest concert films of all time.
No, I'm glad we have a little bit of contrast there, because one of the things that came up when I watched it, obviously I'm watching it on a Mac screen. It's nothing amazing. It's not like a big television screen. So I did wonder in that review whether there was something I was missing from not being able to see it on the big screen. I do remember when I saw Let It Be on my Mac, I wasn't very impressed, but I was very fortunate enough at university to watch Let It Be on the big screen, and suddenly something felt a lot more intense and real and dramatic and exciting. So maybe you felt that from Rock Show, seeing it live in the cinema.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I think it's definitely more of an experience seeing it on a theater screen as compared to our laptops or whatever. It's more intimate.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much footage that you've uploaded as well, and when you kind of break one of the songs out and you kind of view it out of context, like if you just watch his performance of You Gave Me the Answer from like Wings Over Australia or something, it's nothing inherently amazing, but when you watch the whole show, you kind of experience the whole thing, you do kind of get it. You do know what people are paying for and what kind of show McCartney's trying to put on. It's very big and brash and throwback in that kind of grand way. It seems to me though with Jimmy, I've never thought he was a bad guitarist at all. I think he's quite inventive, especially compared to other guitarists in the band. I mean, even if Lawrence Juber was probably the most proficient, he did seem kind of more of a musician for hire from ideas McCartney had. But with Jimmy, I don't see him as being much of a songwriter without someone else there to prop him up. Like all of his most successful tracks always have either someone else he knew from outside the band or McCartney working with him to kind of prop these tunes up.
Yeah, his main songwriting partner was a guy by the name of Colin Allen, who was Jimmy's bandmate in Stone the Crows. And so what happened there was Colin wrote the lyrics, and he gave the lyrics to Jimmy, who put them to music. And I have a quote from Colin here that I'd like to read. He said that Jim was pretty industrious in that respect, almost like he couldn't get enough lyrics. He definitely had a talent for putting words to music.
I've not become too familiar with Jimmy's work outside of Wings, but he did seem to skip from band to band quite regularly. He never seemed to kind of gain a more iconic status purely because he didn't stay with any particular project for too long. Do you think that's kind of indicative to Jimmy's character? Was he kind of unable to rest with one particular group too long, or was it more just kind of circumstance?
I think it's funny you mentioned that, because Jimmy commented on that himself when he joined Wings. There's a lot of people who were saying, "Oh, he won't stay in the band," because look at his career at that point. He'd been in and out of bands. I think Wings was his longest tenured band. I'm racking my brain here.
It's a good one to have. It's a nice paycheck compared to the others as well.
I think also a lot of that had to do with the fact that he was so young being in bands. So part of it probably the maturity factor and almost always playing with people much older than him. So yeah, Wings was definitely his longest tenured band.
It seemed more like he was more of a reluctant soldier in all of this, really. He kind of knew it was a great business deal for him, but he kind of shared similar traits to Henry McCulloch, really, in that sense where you can kind of tell he's not embarrassed, but he's not particularly proud to show off a lot of his Wings contributions to his friends, except for maybe his two particular songs. Speaking of his two particular songs, what do you think about his movement from Medicine Jar into Wino Junko?
I think Wino Junko is a cool little song. I like all the special effects on it. The selfish part of me wishes that Wings would have performed it live, so that Jimmy would have gotten two songs, because I know Denny got like 3 or 4 songs to sing on Wings Over America. But then again, I do think that Medicine Jar is the crowd pleaser. It's more commercial, I guess you could say, as compared to One O Junko.
It does feel like Medicine Jar in an alternative dimension could be a classic. It just doesn't stand out enough. Perhaps, it's just missing that little extra piece of magic that would make it a little more iconic. But the fact that he kind of came to the band with that song ready to go, and McCartney was like, "Oh yeah, okay, cool, throw it on," is a real testament to his ability to write a song. Because it took Denny 4 years to get a song on an actual album that was just his own. Obviously, Paul co-wrote No Words with him on Band on the Run, so Jimmy kind of broke the record in that sense, I suppose.
Yeah, Medicine Jar was the first non-McCartney song that Paul allowed on a Wings album, so that was pretty cool.
And it does feel like its own thing as well. It does feel like something that exists separately from Venus and Mars, which kind of has this airy, almost Bowie-esque quality. It is very different than what Jimmy was working on, and it does show that the different band members could bring different things together. I mean, I've always felt, especially when you go back and look at Retro Speedway and the songs that could have been on the 2-disc album, that Wings were better when they worked as a complete band rather than just, the Paul McCartney show or the main trio. If Jimmy had been in the band longer, I do feel like he could have gotten 2 songs on an album, maybe even 3, and he could have been a definite personality. But maybe, do you feel he was was he too young? Was he too wild to be in a band with McCartney?
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that Paul is a very dominant personality, and it's his band. So basically, it's his way or the highway, and he didn't really allow Jimmy too much creative freedom musically. So that played an impact on Jimmy wanting to leave, and also, the money situation. Paul didn't pay the band members nearly enough as what they deserved to make. I mean, they still made a pretty nice,
oh yes, of course,
nice little paycheck. I mean, Jimmy bought his own flat thanks to his Wings checks, and he had a Rolls Royce, and
I guess it always feels naive when people join Wings and then leave, because you know what the gig's going to be. You will, like, if you go into the band, and I guess this might be Jimmy's downfall with any other notion that you're not just going to be the Paul McCartney backing band playing songs like Single Pigeon and With a Little Luck for the rest of your life, then you're going to have a problem somewhere down there along the line. I guess it was always doomed to fail in that sense. What about the rumours that he was a bit of a drug fiend? Is that just McCartney kind of shying attention away from himself a bit?
I believe so. Yeah. I mean, let's be real here. It was the 70s, so Jimmy wasn't a perfect angel, but he smoked pot, and
yes.
But he wasn't a hard drug user at all. So people like to comment on the fact that Jimmy wrote and sang 2 anti-drug songs in Wings, and then it's so ironic that he passed away from an overdose. Well, it's not really ironic because he didn't write the lyrics. I know what those songs are about, and they're not about Jimmy trying to warn himself or whatever you read in the Venus and Mars archive edition where Paul said that. But I do believe that Jimmy had his he had his dark side, as we all do, and it's unfortunate what happened, because he was so young, and that's life, I guess.
Everything with the band always seems to be slightly heightened, and everything that does get leaked anyway, you can kind of tell that there might be a certain motivation behind that. And McCartney is the propaganda master. He is the media mogul, bar none, really. And the story of Wings is going to be the story as seen by Paul McCartney. We're never going to truly know how maybe irritating or annoying he is to work with, the strains of being in the band. Obviously, if you want to be like Jimmy or Denny and you want to tour and do it live, and Paul wants to take a year off to write some songs and he's not going to let you do anything else, you're going to get quite bored in that cottage up in Scotland, I imagine. And you can just imagine the scene now. Jimmy's throwing a ball at the wall, and he's wanting to play some guitar, and Paul's just banging away at the piano with some other grandma ditty. You can't really blame him for leaving the band, but it is a shame. Personally, I would have always had Hugh McCracken as the lead guitarist in Wings, but sadly that was never to happen. I literally just listened to Ram today in its full on my vinyl player, and he absolutely contributes something that kind of rivals McCartney a lot more than Jimmy did. And like you just said, Paul possibly was too much of a dominant figure to allow Jimmy to become a kind of Hugh McCracken figure that would add to the sound of Wings as a whole, rather than just contribute little parts that he's allowed to. Before we move on to the actual album, I just want to kind of get some rudimentary questions out of the way. We kind of ask these to all guests on the show to kind of lay the foundations of what you might think about the band and the music in general. Going back a little bit, what is your favourite Beatles album?
Oh gosh.
No one likes that question, don't worry.
My favorite Beatles album, I'd have to say probably Revolver.
Mm-hmm. It's a safe choice. What about Revolver is, ranks it above things like Pepper or say Rubber Soul to you? Is it just the songs, or is there just something in particular that draws you back to Revolver?
I would say probably the songs and how they all flow together. And I don't know, there's just something special about listening to Revolver in terms of my enjoyment. I'd also have to put the White Album up there, because it has a little bit of everything.
You can't ignore the White Album, you really can't.
Mm-mm.
Is your favourite Beatles song from Revolver as well?
My favorite Beatles song depends on my mood, so I can't really tell you what it is at the moment. It's been everything from Eleanor Rigby to a Day in the Life to I'm Only Sleeping. So it all varies.
I'm Only Sleeping is a good choice. One of my closest friends, his favourite song is I'm Only Sleeping as well. It's got something very hypnotic about it that just kind of keep drawing you back. What is your favourite solo McCartney album? Solo or with Wings?
So I differentiate between Paul solo and Wings. My favorite Paul solo album is Ram, and
of course,
my favorite Wings album is probably Venus and Mars, not including Wings Over America.
Venus and Mars. It does seem to me like that the deeper I go into forums and the McCartney literature, that it is a very highly esteemed album. A lot more so than I initially thought going in. Like I always felt originally that it was going to be just the album they did after Band on the Run, but especially the first side, it's very solid. Obviously McCartney heavy on the front. It is all of his songs, and it almost does feel like he's pushing the rest of the band back to the second disc. But Jimmy does make a nice statement on that album. He does feel like he's his own entity, and he is making a statement. So I can understand why you like that one. Do we know if Jimmy was working on any other songs with the band around that point, or was it just those two?
Well, I talked to Jimmy's brother when I was over in England, and I asked him if he had any songs that he was working on during the London Town sessions, and he said that he did, but I'm not sure what songs those were actually, because there's no real information out there on them.
There's nothing on the Water Wings bootleg or anything like that.
No, so
and obviously you have all of that on your YouTube channel. I went through some of the videos on it yesterday, and I went back to you can click a button where it's like sort by earliest, and it's been going for 8 years now, which is kind of back to the earliest days of YouTube. And you've got some clips on there now that obviously accumulated views over time, as they are the easiest place to get a lot of Wings material. And it was one of the main reasons as why I wanted to get you on this show, was just to kind of obviously say thank you for that YouTube channel. Obviously there is no other thing on it on the website that has as many McCartney bootlegs and studio tapes and concert footage, and a lot of candid interviews as well, and kind of radio rarities that, again, you really cannot find anywhere. So yeah, thank you for all of that. You know, I wouldn't have had access to songs like Luxie if without your channel. I would have never known it had existed. Obviously, you've been building this channel for 8 years now, and the major question I have is, where do you get half of that stuff from? I mean, some of that is really, really candid stuff.
Mostly bootleg forums. Bootleg Zone is my favorite.
Okay.
My favorite forum of choice, and you know, they have pretty much everything there. So just do a search on there, and you'll find what you're looking for.
Now, before we move on to the album, there was one question I did neglect to ask you. What is your favourite solo McCartney song and your favourite Wings McCartney song?
That's a good question. My favorite solo McCartney song. Oh boy.
There are so many to choose from.
Yeah, there's so many.
How can you commit to just one? You know, you'll disappoint so many others.
Yeah, anything from, you know, OOU on McCartney to Save Us from New.
Oh, okay. I was never a big fan of Save Us. I'm going to be talking about Save Us in a gig review that he did for the 2013 Tokyo Dome show, and I always felt Save Us felt a little bit forced compared to some of the other songs that appeared on that set list. I did like Queenie Eye. Queenie Eye was a very nice song from that album. It kind of had that old McCartney charm to it.
Yeah, Queenie Eye is a good song.
Did you like New? Were you a fan of New?
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I can't wait for his new album whenever that comes out, probably next year.
Yeah, with the song about Donald Trump on it, apparently. That sounds like it'll be something interesting. And obviously he's, 74 now? 73, 74? I'm so glad that he's still out there making music. And the thing with McCartney is, no matter how you received the album the first time, whether you have to go back and revisit it in a few years, there are always those two solid songs that always happen straight away, even if you don't like the album as a whole. That just shows that you never wanted to stop, really.
Mm-hmm.